Hello, hello, and welcome to the Borealis Experience podcast. I'm very, very excited to be talking to James Olsen. Today, we will address racism and the issues that we see in society when it comes to Indigenous people and, the people around. I feel there's a lot of um, assumptions, a lot of fear, a lot of aggression. And I have a lot of listeners from Germany, from all over the place, and they don't know about some of the issues that we face here at time. And they're very relatable, though. We're not an exception here in Canada. I think it's an issue that is all over the world. And we want to talk about it today and maybe, clean up some misconceptions or, have a raw and genuine conversation about it, because I think that's what has to happen. We have to start talking about it in order to heal and resolve those problems that exist. So, James Olsen, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here. Just jump into the topic and we will go from there.
Thanks, Aurora. Well, thanks for having me on. It's definitely a topic that I think I can really relate to. For your listeners that don't know, I'm a Blackfoot native from Siksika Nation. I've been on your show before. We haven't talked about racism or anything like that of those, that kind of area, but I've experienced it in my life before, or taken on the assumption that it was racism by the way that I was treated. And I think, like you said, I agree with what you said, that it definitely is affected by it. I think humans is creatures naturally have some prejudice or how would you say, ideas without fact base, I guess, or just to jump to assumptions of how someone's going to be, or an experience is going to be based on just a general fact, rather than actually, allowing yourself to have an experience and take it in without prejudice, prejudice, prejudging, basically coming to assumptions before your experience. I find when it happens with people, that's kind of where, as humans, we run into problems. So, so it's definitely a topic that I have experience personally with. Lethbridge is a place where I think that it is a part of that culture, society, or that city. I think there's definite that is part of it. So I don't know. I put some thought in this. You talked to me about this topic, I think last time we spoke, and I put some thought into it, and kind of the ideas that I come up with are my own ideas. I don't want you to think that these are, I'm just basically putting together thoughts. So I don't want, these aren't facts. These aren't, I don't have anything to base it on other than my own experience and my own ideas. But one of the ideas that I have is that racism or prejudice seems to me, by looking at society and where it seems prominent, and trying to come together with an idea why it's happening, I would assume, or I would suggest, maybe it's it's the complication between the majority and the biggest minority. So New York, or big urban place like that down in the States, it seems to me it's white and blacks, and they kind of like they butt heads. But it always seems for some to be the majority, the biggest, basically the biggest minority.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever the majority is, and then the biggest minority, that seems to be the complicated relationship that it happens in, if that makes any sense. And that's just an assumption of mine. I have no proof of that at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something that I came, looking at when it happens and why it's just, it seems like a reasonable assumption. So Lethbridge being just outside of a reservation, and a native reservation, the native population seems to be the biggest minority.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a lot of it. Here's an example. Lethbridge, it seems to be a conflict between the whites and the natives. You go to Calgary, and it seemed like, I don't know if anybody else's experience, but I see a complication between the whites and the East Indians,
Mm-hmm.
because that seems to be the biggest majority there.
Mm-hmm.
It was a weird experience for me when I was younger. I moved to Calgary, and all sort of that racial tension for me disappeared. It vanished. There just didn't. I was like, man, Calgary's like totally different place. But I saw a lot of racial conflict between the East Indians, and that was the kind of that I experienced as a native experience, I guess, in Lethbridge, racial experience in Lethbridge. So that's kind of where I came up with that assumption. I don't know if there's any facts based, or if there's anything that can prove that, but that's just what I see. But as I went over all what I thought, or what I thought were racist experiences in my own life, I sat there and I tried to go over all the events that I felt like I was, being treated badly because of the color of my skin. Every single one of them, I have no proof that was really what happened.
But that's how you felt.
I did feel that, but it
Exactly.
was under my own assumption is my point.
Ah,
And
because I was going to say what you
I have a story. Yeah.
No, I was
felt
going to
like
say,
that.
yeah, so that's valid.
It is I believe it's valid. I'll give you an example. And this was recently. This was like last week.
Shit.
I just moved to BC, to a little town called Elkford, and one of the close towns by me is Fernie, and we go there for shopping. Like, they have bigger grocery stores and things of that nature. So me and my girlfriend and my child were in Fernie, and we went to the farm. We went to a drugstore, and we were in there. And I wasn't really looking for anything out of the pharmacy, but I had some questions for the pharmacist about transferring over all my stuff to BC. And one of it was getting a doctor in BC, because I'm a resident of BC now. And so I kind of had a question about what that looked like. Am I going to run into problems? Do you suggest it? And more, the reason I had those questions was because I remember when I got my doctor in Lethbridge, it was really hard because to get a family medical doctor was kind of complicated, because there were so many people and so few doctors. So it took a while for me to get a family doctor. And I was wondering if that same situation was happening in BC. So I kind of had a question inside a question type of thing. So I went up to this pharmacist in this drugstore and I said, I'm a new resident here. What do you think about me getting a doctor in town here? Should I stay with the one I've got? Should I, I've I have asthma. I need my puffers. Like, can I transfer my prescriptions here? Kind of, just I'm looking for if he's got pros and cons type, help me make a decision type of thing, thinking he would have some information because he's a pharmacist. And he kind of he generally said, well, I don't, it's kind of up to you, but I would suggest that you go talk to your doctor about it, see what he says, which was reasonable. But in COVID times, it's difficult to get into your doctor. It's even difficult to get him on the phone. And so I said that to him, and he was like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Like, and we started we just weren't lining up on what I was looking for his advice. And he was kind of in the position of, it's kind of, I don't have any advice to give you. Mm-hmm. And I was getting angry. I was like, not because you kind of being deflective and really wasn't giving, and he was gesturing to like turning away and doing other things as he was speaking to me, and just didn't feel like being engaging. And part of the problem was I wasn't clear on my questioning, and then part of them was really in the moment I just thought he had poor manners, kind of turning his back to me as in the middle of this conversation. Mm-hmm. And I was getting upset, I was annoyed. Mm-hmm. And my girlfriend was standing behind me watching this, and she came in and interjected and started basically answering for him, and I was like, well, I know that stuff, like you don't need to, like I'm aware of that, I'm talking to her, and she's like, well, come on, let's just go. And so we go outside, and I'm frustrated and I'm upset, and I'm like, that guy was a dick, like what the hell? And she's like, I think he was being racist. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I could have gone there very easily. Mm-hmm. But then the logic in me was like, first of all, I got a mask on, I mean, you can see, like I'm not super dark, my complexion isn't super dark. It is noticeable, but I just assumed that he wasn't. And when you brought this topic up, that it reminded me of that story, how easily I could turn the narrative to how someone treats me into racism. Yes. And as I looked back on my experience, that I felt like I was being treated racist, a lot of them reflected that story. Mm-hmm. Where it was, I could easily assume that that's what was going on. Mm-hmm. And it might not have been. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of, so, and I'm not saying that there's no such thing as racism. I'm just saying that in a lot of my experiences, it's just the easy assumption.
Wow.
And yeah,
I must say that I didn't expect anything. Like, I knew we were going to talk about this topic, but for you to voice this is so big. I hope you know that, because me as a white person now, I know that if I talk to you, you will see like all different shades. You will see, oh, Aurora is being rude. She's being an asshole as a human being. Or Aurora is being plain racist. And it's two different things that you can mix up so easily, but some people are just rude. Like some people just have
Absolutely.
no behavior. And I feel for your own good, then it's better for you too to see, okay, that was an asshole, instead of, oh, I was being treated racist, because that's even more painful to realize, right?
It is, and it creates resentments and anger. Like it's, and then the reverse happens. Um, when I go home, and it, like, I don't want to give the wrong idea that racism doesn't exist,
Mm-hmm.
but um, what I this approach, when I actually think about it, all I'm saying is I'm not going to jump to that conclusion till I know that they state that fact. And if
Yeah.
they state that fact, then I think there's a conversation in need if they're willing to have it. Like,
Yes.
let's talk about it. I like, if you feel that way, and like let's have a discussion. Like like if you run into me and all you see is my skin color, and you take not even, if I can get 5 minutes out of you, believe me that my skin color is going to be the last thing you think about. I'm going to make you question why you have these prejudice.
Yeah.
And that's my objective.
Yeah.
And I think that position is a more powerful position than the hatred caused by racism
Yes. Yeah.
is like, because it's sort of a victimized position. You
Exactly.
hate me because of my skin, or you because of my culture, my people, or what you've seen of my people. Like, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You're really a victim in that situation, and it's a shame. But I think in the position that I'm just going to assume that race has nothing to do with it. And if you do think that way, then I feel for you, and I honestly want to hear why, and
Mm-hmm.
see if there's any sort of discussion about
Yeah.
it. And so for me, what it is getting out of the position of a victim, where I'm prejudged as my skin color, culture, the people that I come from, to a position of, as a human being, I want to know why you can't see me as a fellow human being rather than this my nationality.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk on a personal one-to-one. But part of that position of always assuming that someone is just a person, and just mean, and rude and bad manners, rather than they hate all natives or Indians, whatever you want to say. Um, what it does for me is it creates a position of power, in the fact that I am not letting your problems affect me.
Yes.
If you have a problem, that's your personal problem, and not mine that I need to carry. Because what it does is, if you go around and believe that everybody hates you because of your skin color, then the only position to feel any sort of control is to hate them back, and it
Exactly.
causes almost reverse racism, where
Exactly.
all, and I see it a lot, where a lot of um, poorly treated natives are come to the conclusion that all white people suck.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just judging. They treat me bad, and that's a terrible, terrible position to be in, because you're a victim to a society.
Yeah.
You can't join you, and so it causes separation. It causes resentments. It causes prejudice turned back on itself.
Yeah.
And there's just it just you're trapped in a society that doesn't like you, and
Exactly.
that's awful.
Yeah. Yeah. And you create it in your
And
own
so
head.
yeah, well, I don't think it's created in your own head. I'm sure something happened that did, and you might have run into a racist person, but as a whole, and especially with the current um, climate around that topic. I mean, there was, the move Black Lives Matter and thing where, I don't think any celebrity that announces that he's racist, I'm almost positive that your career is done in that moment. Like, just like the general, and my point being, the general public doesn't agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
They're very offended by racism.
Mm-hmm.
And so on that point alone, I'm just going to assume that the general public isn't racist, right? And that there's a few bad apples, but I can't let myself just assume that because of your skin color that you just automatically feel that way or have those beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
because it holds me back. And it not only does it hold me back, but it puts me in a place of somebody else has control over me.
Exactly.
And for myself, I can't exist like that. I have control over myself.
Yeah. No,
There's a saying that references that that idea, and it's assume ignorance before malevolence. And what they mean by that, like just assume that they don't know. And malevolence just means the act of being evil for the reason of being evil, right? And so before we assume that humans are malevolent and mean and evil, assume that they're just dumb. They don't know.
Yes.
They're and I mean, more than often, it's a great option. Like that works in so many different ways. That saying, that it's just they're dumb when it comes to manners. That pharmacist kept turning his back on me as we're having a conversation. He just sucked at having conversations and didn't know how to be engaging in a conversation. It wasn't that he saw my skin color past my mask and my hat that I was wearing, and one of these guys, he was rude. He was, but, and it's not going to work for everything, but I think when, let's completely identify the fact that someone is racist and then address that rather than the assumption and leaving it inside, because if you assume that and you walk away, you're carrying it around.
Exactly.
It's in your head. You didn't address it and you're carrying it around, or you wrongly accused it. I could only imagine was if someone came up to you, Aurora, and said, I think you're racist, how that would affect you and bother you, and how do you prove that you're not? What do you have? It's one of those things that you can just paint a whole, but the problem is the discussion. It's not open for discussion. You've stamped a label on somebody, and it's something that needs to be discussed. If you have a prejudice against natives, let's say, because I can relate to that. Let's go further and discuss. I want to discuss it. What I want to know how you got there, and what I've seen, because I know people that have prejudice and that are racist. And as far as I can tell, it's been handed down by the parenting. I find it relatable to, let's say, child abuse. And what I mean by that is there's been studies about how many kids that had experienced child abuse and then ended up abusing their own kids. If you think about it, it's taught, it's learned. They have every reason to continue that cycle. But the study shows that it's a small percent that actually went through a child abuse and then chose to abuse their own children.
Mm-hmm.
It's an actual small percent that does. And if it, in one study, they said if it wasn't, and everyone that had experienced child abuse abused their children, that in something like 7 generations, every child parent relationship would be abusive. That's how like it just grows. So that idea kind of states that the resilience of humans, like I went through something bad and I choose not to continue that cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that also goes with the racial thing, the racism, sorry, that just because your parents had some screwed up ideas about things or people and they announced it as a child, you yourself get to choose what you're going to do with that. It's not, well, I was taught that this is how it is.
Mm-hmm.
I you know I think it's so it's kind of a weak idea to think that just because you were shown it as a child that's enough that you're going to make those assumptions yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think that like Lethbridge, I think a great part of the bad relationships between whites and natives, a lot of it comes from the homeless population. The homeless, an overall number, the majority of the homeless population in Lethbridge is native.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say that it reflects badly on, natives, but I mean, not every homeless person in the world is native. It changes from location to location. And, I think it's just a poor connection. It's an unreasonable, line between two dots, homeless and natives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so then to generalize and that let you create an identity from that is just a lack of information or a lack of willingness to do any sort of, research on your own or really look into it. Right. It's kind of a lazy assumption is what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
So my point being is that I really think the way to solve racism would be, I relate it to the environment. There's a lot of people out there trying to change the world, and good for them. And I feel for the ones out there, trying to save the oceans, trying to save the climate, trying to save the forests. That's a big, like, if you want to pick a fight, that's the biggest fight. I'm going to change the world. Well, good for you. And I wish you the best, but I hope you have yourself organized. I hope that you have your own issues taken care of before you change the world. And the reason I hope that is because I'm a big believer myself, is the best way to change the world is yourself. If everybody took responsibility for themselves, a lot of the world's issues would go away. And that's so my position on it is really a position of mastering self. when you start taking care of your own backyard, the world's a little bit prettier in your neighborhood. And if everybody else starts taking care of their own backyard and being accountable for their own actions, it can be world changing, really. And it like from the environment to racism, I think. And my position on that is just because you can't change others, you're smashing yourself on a brain. If you want to change the ideas of others, I'm sorry, I hate to burst your bubble, but you're not going to eradicate racism. There's always going to be a few that feel you can't change their mind, and it sucks that they're there. That somebody feels that way, but it's a fact. Mm-hmm. But what you can do is be accountable for your own ideas and your own beliefs, and really put someone I listen to is, before you save the world, make sure your room is clean. And what that means is
your head
or literally your room.
Yeah.
How dare you go and judge the rest of the world when you can't even make your bed? Get organized, get yourself straight, and then if you still feel like there's something to be done, do that. But when you're out there, virtue signaling, that you're just make sure that if somebody starts diving into your background, that you've got it all cleaned and tidy. Because you lose the power of what you're trying to do when you haven't taken care of your own backyard and you're complaining about the way the neighborhood is. Mm-hmm. You don't have if you're on a soapbox, it's not very strong, because you're on false pretenses. Anybody, you just have to. It's just a better way. If you have a strong foundation, then it's not going to be shaken. But mm-hmm. when you're judging others for their behaviors and your own are weak, it's not a very sturdy position to be in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The problem sometimes is that we take our thoughts, our beliefs so serious. We believe them to be so true that we would never start and question them, because if we did, our reality would crumble. We would have to create a new reality on how we see life and the world. And that's so scary. It's so much easier to look at the neighbor and say, oh, this is wrong and this. But if you look at yourself, and to get to that point is such a big journey too, because like I said, we think our thoughts are normal. We think the way we feel about certain things is normal, until we question, what was I given from my parents into my little backpack that I should actually question in order to make evolution happen and make racism maybe disappear one day. And you're totally right. I get exactly what you mean, that we have to look at ourselves first, and that some people don't. They just try to change others.
Well, it's so much easier to change others. It's so much easier to look at their faults, because when you're looking and seeing somebody else's faults, you don't have to do any work.
Yeah.
You just make a determination. Well, that person should take care of that. They should be accountable for that. They should do the work to fix it. But when you look at yourself, you're the one on the hook. You're the one that needs to do the work.
Yeah.
That's a harder position than judging somebody else for not taking care of themselves. Yeah. Now you need to step up and start working on yourself and changing some things about yourself.
Yeah.
So we're like water. We take the easiest route all the time. It's just a natural behavior of us. And so, but the problem is when you're taking the easy route, the results suck. You get the results and the amount of effort something takes are an exact correlation.
Mm-hmm.
Anything of worth has to be earned or is hard to gain.
Mm-hmm.
It's factual. Like, it's if you give somebody a car in 3 weeks, it's going to be the wrong color. If they spent 5 years earning the money for it, that little jalopy is going to be their prized possession because they worked and earned it. And that's just factual of humans beings. It's we get a lot of fulfillment out of earning and hard work at gaining something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true even with our existence. Our that we fought for and worked on and ideas that we gained by researching or studying, those are sought after. Assumptions of like a racial assumption is just it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
You just connected two dots, whether they're factual or not. You didn't put a lot of research into it. Like any sort of looked into evidence that you've put some time and effort into
Mm-hmm.
would have proven you wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You would, because if you look at, I don't care what your skin color is, every one of us is different. We can't group it because of our skin color or where we're from, or it's each individual is an individual. Mm-hmm. End of story. Mm-hmm. And so if you took that as a fact and just looked at every individual as an individual, the world, like racism, would disappear. Mm-hmm. But the only way you can do that is starting with yourself. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the power position that you're taking, like I hope so many people will hear this, because both sides have to hear that. White people have to hear that, and native people have to hear that, because what you're saying is so powerful that you refuse to put yourself in the victim position of a victim, and you give people the benefit of the doubt, right?
It goes back to the golden rule of treat others the way you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. I would never want anyone to come to me and say, you've judged me on the color of my skin. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to do that with someone else. Mm-hmm. And what it does is it creates dialogue. And I could have so easily just assumed that when my girlfriend mentioned it about that pharmacist. Mm-hmm. That's what his problem. He just judged me. He, I just don't see any positives in that. Mm-hmm. No, now I have a resentment against this guy. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do with it? Well, nothing. It's just going to torment me in dark places.
Yeah.
I'm going to, I'm going to be, next time I see a pharmacist, I'd be like, well, that last one, he was racist. Like, yeah. I hate these pharmacists, you know, and it creates more problems than anything positive.
Exactly.
And so, like, I guess a good reference is, what's the difference between anger and resentment? And so a good analogy I heard was, if you're in the garage and you smash your finger with a hammer, you're going to throw that hammer across the garage, and that's going to be anger. But a resentment is, you smack your hand with that hammer, and then 3 weeks later, you're trying to figure out a way to get back at that hammer. Well, that's what you do with people when you pick up a resentment. Mm-hmm. It consumes. It's taking up your time. It's taking up your you want to get back. You want revenge. You want, and it's just, it's negative energy that's consuming your day and your thoughts, and it really, there's not a lot of positives in it.
Yeah.
It's so much easier just to go back to that one quote of, assume ignorance over malevolence.
Mm-hmm.
That he was just dumb. Like, he just didn't know how to hold a conversation. He didn't know how to interact with people.
Exactly.
I don't believe that he's hateful. And
Yeah.
if he is, he's the one losing out.
Yeah. Totally.
That's his cross to bear.
Yeah.
I don't want to pick it up. Like, sorry, but I just don't want to. It's, for me, it's master of self.
Yes.
What can I change for the better?
Yeah.
Master of my own, destiny.
Yeah.
I can be a better part of society because I choose to carry these positive beliefs, or to not continue in this them and they, them and us.
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to see everyone as a different situation.
yeah. And that's the only way, I feel. I do that with cashiers. Like, sometimes when a cashier is being rude with me, I just think, oh, she's having a bad day. I'm not going to take it personal, but because, and then I invent stories. Maybe her dad died. Maybe her brother is an asshole or something, to not make it about myself anymore, because people tend to do that. We take things too serious and too personal, and then react and add fire to the fire. And it's just a complete mess. Can I share with you?
The position. Yeah.
Yeah, no?
All I was going to say was the position of a victim is you've given all your power to them.
Yes.
You don't have any control.
Exactly.
They control your.
Yeah, they control your happiness and how you feel about yourself, but you also give them the control, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I would like to share with you, and it's the first time I share this with a native person here in Canada, my prejudice. How do you say prejudice?
Yeah,
That
prejudice. Yeah.
prejudice that I had when I came here. I moved here 7 years ago, and growing up in Germany, we saw these movies where Europeans were coming into America, and the slaughter and all the violence and like horrible things that happened. I get here,
Yeah.
and that was 7 years ago. I was so surprised that nobody even addresses that topic. Like, I saw white people looking down to native people and say, ah, yeah, they're drug addicts, they're homeless, blah, blah, blah. And I kept being more and more curious, because coming from Germany, my generation is used to reflect about World War II and to make sure that this will never, ever happen again. So I come to Canada and kind of thought, oh, this is how everybody deals with bullshit from history. But here I realized nobody is addressing it. Like, you guys look down on people. Like, what the fuck is going on? Really, I was getting mad, and I started meeting with natives, and it was weird for them, this white chick from Germany, why is she interested in us? But I needed to make sense of it. And I went to that, I forgot his name, but he hold a speech at the university about residential schools. And then I started to think, okay, now we're getting to the point now. But there was nobody in that classroom. Like, there were 5 people. And I think we were all immigrants. We were all from Europe, supporting this native guy. And what is going on? Why are Canadians not looking at this? Like, you have to look at it feel bad about it, and then find solutions, but you can't run away. It's not possible. So I started, and then I think with Trudeau, he's not awesome. I'm not going to pull out politics here, but he started to disclose more and more stories about residential, what happened back then with residential schools. And I was like, okay, now we're getting better. Like now we're reflecting. And then I lived in Lethbridge and saw for myself, like I worked in a little grocery store, and there was a lot of stealing and bullshit going on. And 90% of the time, it was people with Native background. The assumption I made was that Native people went through so much trauma, and they were forced in these schools, and they went through so much like horrible things there, that traumatized them. And that trauma is inherited. You inherit the pain that you suffer, and you give the story to your children, and they have that pain on their DNA, so to say. And of course, and I was just like you, I had so much troubles in school. So a big part of me was able to relate to people that were being like forced through this school system. And that's my assumptions that I made, is that spiritual people have no place in this white society. They're being pushed to the edge and being shown that they're not valuable. And I see myself as a spiritual person, but the Native community even more, like more in tune with nature, more in tune with health and medicine. And I feel like the troubles that we have right now, like the solution, the key to positivity again lies in the Native community, because you know how to heal and how to live with nature and not destroy nature, and live a healthy life in tune with nature. But there's no place for that in society. So the conclusion I made is that those people find escape in prostitution and alcoholism because they feel they don't belong, and they feel they're not being valued for that they can bring to society. And some people say, yeah, I can totally see how that could be a reality. And some people say, no, I think that's a little bit too far-fetched. Does it make sense what I'm sharing with you? Like, can you?
It does, and I think that there's a multitude of problems there that you addressed. You know, the from stealing to, you know, you said the majority was natives, to you know, the problems of addiction and homelessness, and so again, I'm going to return to the fact of, you know, we could take the world on and all the world's problems, or we could be accountable for ourselves. And that's my message.
Wow.
You know, you could sit there and say, you know, like, let's fix these problems, the problems of, you know, you going back to, you know, my mother was in residential school, and it directly affected, you know, her and what happened with her. The problem that I have with it, and I'm not speaking for her, anybody that was in residential school, because I have no experience in that. The only thing I have experience in is identifying myself as a victim of somebody else's poor behavior. And I fight that position because of this. It's a helpless position. You can't do a damn thing about it. You can't do damn thing about the past. You can't do a damn thing about being wronged. You can't change others. The only way to get back from victim to survivor is to say, what can I do about myself?
Mm-hmm.
I choose not to pass these things that happened to me on or to my children. In spite of what happened to me, I choose to try and be the best mom I can be. I try to be the best person in society I can be. And it's only you can't if you're hoping to fix the wrongs of the world. Good for you. I hope you do. But what my position the message that I have about this and a lot of other issues is, what are you doing to fix yourself? Because the reality of the situation is, the only thing in this world you can change is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's an absolute for me. And if everybody took that position, that's where world change happens.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't. So you can absolutely change how you are and how you act. Mm-hmm. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take searching, trying to figure out how to do it. But when you do, and when you become positive, and when you become your own master, the world around you gets better. Your children have a better father. You're a better child. You're a better aunt, uncle. You're a better employee. You're a better employer. You're a better friend. And that little part of that work, which is that part of the world that you take, everything around you gets better.
Mm-hmm.
Because you made a choice to make yourself better. And if everybody did that, and what it also does is creates attraction. People look at you and they're like, I don't know what it is about Aurora, but something about that woman I like.
Mm-hmm.
How can I be more like her?
Mm-hmm.
And it's attractive. And in attraction is where other people are going to want to do what you're doing. And that's how I really believe that's how the world changes, is taking a position of, I'm going to leave the world a little bit better than the way that I found it. And I'm going to start with that today. Mm-hmm. By changing myself.
Wow. I hope you know that you are such a inspiration and such a warrior. And I hope that you have listeners, beside my podcast here, that you have a platform where you express yourself, you shine your light like you do here. Do you have that?
Yes. I have friends that I work with, and I have, people that I work with that in the addiction community I should definitely share that message. And that's a big part of my recovery story, is being accountable for my own actions and changing what I can change. And that's me.
Yeah. And for me, what I just shared, to know that, no, you don't want pity. You don't want to go back and see, oh yeah, all that trauma, and this is why I'm a victim today. You want to be empowered and you want to feel understood.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody does. Everybody I think that's why, some of the strongest words in the human vocabulary is me too. Mm-hmm. That means somebody's listening to you, somebody understands, and somebody identifies with you. Yeah. And it creates a connection. Yeah. And I think that's a powerful position. Yeah. Is to be able to identify with somebody else's struggle and to share those hardships. And there's a connection built where you can, once you share a hardship, you can also share a triumph as well.
Mhm.
And that for me, that's what community is, to be a part of the lows and the highs.
Yeah. Yeah. But being accountable for yourself, for your actions, reflecting about your thoughts and your reactions in daily life, and to ask questions, to be curious. Whenever you sense racist vibes, go in there and ask questions without being aggressive. Like, just assume that the person doesn't know how they just made you feel, and go from there, because this is how you keep your powerful position. You don't go into defensiveness and victim mentality. You keep your powerful position when you just assume the other person doesn't know better. And if they are racist, yeah, then leave it at their, like, in their, how do you say, on their side, and don't take it on. And yeah.
Like I said, if you ran into me and denounced that you were racist, the first and only thing I want to do is I want to have a discussion about it. Tell me about it. Tell me how you got to that position.
Yeah.
Let's discuss where you came up with these beliefs. Like, I just as a curiosity fact, I want to know.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's take a rational look at it. Like, let's throw some logic onto that fire of yours, and let's see what comes out.
Yeah.
And I'm not there to change your mind, but I'm there to make you think about something. I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you, if you came to me and were judging me on my skin, when you left that conversation, my skin's the last thing you're going to be thinking about.
Yeah.
I'm going to plant some ideas in your head. And that, that's the point, is if you ask questions, you're in a position that you're going to make somebody else think about what their own actions.
Yeah.
And that's the genesis to change.
Yeah.
That's the genesis to accountability.
Yeah.
What am I doing and why am I doing it? And I think that's the real message there. So
Yeah.
thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, this was a very powerful conversation. I'm so glad that we connected once more. Like, another
Yeah.
topic that you totally aced. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, you people out there. And I hope you can spread this beautiful message of empowerment and, yeah, inspiration, motivation to make this world a better place with less racism.